excited today to share with you a design in the newest member of the Embrilliance Essentials programs, the Accuquilt Essentials. It merges my favorite cutting die system, Accuquilt, for quilting, with Embrilliance software, and specifically the Essentials part of the software. Now, I recommend that if you want some more detailed videos, maybe an overview, if you're not familiar with this wonderful application, then you go search for Go Design Overview by Bright and Leap, and you'll find many YouTube videos, very specific, very to the point, excellent viewing. Here's just one more creative way of doing things with it. That said, let's open a new page in our Accuquilt Essentials and begin designing. Okay, let's open our new page and let's set up our workspace and our essentials so that we can use the tools Essentials offers us to their greatest potential. A new page, there's a little piece of paper on the far left-hand side of your screen in the top toolbar, and it looks like a sun on it. Let's click on that and we have a total new page. Now this may or may not be the right size for what we want to do. So I'm going to click on my preference window, which looks like a file with bars on it. And the first thing I'm going to set is my hoop size. I have a Janome machine, so I want my hoop size to be in the Jeff format. And if I click on the down arrow, now mine comes up because it's set up, I can actually access all different types of formats for this particular software. Select Jeff and I select my hoop size. I like to design in my 220 by 220 millimeters, and so I select that hoop. It is a normal hoop, not multi-position. I don't need to create it, it's in there. Embrilliance, Bright and Leap has added just about everything, but if they haven't, then you can do it yourself. It's amazing. I'm going to select Apply, and you could see you may be able to have seen the yellow outline jump into position. The grid settings, I'm going to show my lines, and I'm going to have my metric spacing at 10 or my horizontal and vertical at 1. Now I can have this snap to the grid if I choose. I don't want it to snap to the grid today. And I can set my color. There's a lot of different things that I can set here, but I want to take you to conversion. My files will be saved in Jeff. You can select the down arrow and I can save to any other type of format that I want. The stitch format again is going to be Jeff. It is my preferred format. For you it may be HUS, it may be PCS, but you have to tell it what is your preferred format. Let's go to the Files menus. This is important because it will have to do with actually not creating a buildup of thread underneath our applique designs. When you select Files, you're going to automatically have the when saving. You want to remove overlaps when saving stitch files. You want to treat objects labeled as applique position as filled. We want those two toggled on. The other two are your choice, and you can always select them if you want to. But these are important, and you'll see why towards the end of my video, what happens if you have them selected. Remember, an applique position goes down. You do not want a thread buildup under a position, a piece of fabric that has been ironed to it, because what you'll have is threads popping through, or at least the texture of the threads popping through your applique. So this actually will skip those stitches and create a nice, even, smooth applique when you're all finished. We're going to select Apply to our changes and OK. We are now ready to bring in our designs and start designing. And I'm going to show you how I created the candy cane shape using the feathers in the Accuquilt Go library. So to do that, I have to select my shapes, and I'm going to toggle on the key that you see here. It's Merge Designs from the library. So I'll click on that and I'll get a drop-down menu as to all of the designs that are in my library. If I select the blue button, I can actually look, and I've got Applique Border Geometric Holiday Rag and Retired. For now, I'm going to go with the Applique library, and it's entitled Accuquilt Applique. Sorry, bit my tongue. And I'm going to select the 5508 die, and I love it because it also tells me what die I'm going to be using, and I'm going to select the feathers. With the die shape library, sub-library selected, I am going to select my large feather. Now, I did not use the small feather. If I wanted to select both, I would simply, on my keyboard, depress my Shift key and select the small feather as well. Both shapes are highlighted. I select OK and it will appear on my screen. But I don't want the small feather. I'm only going to be using this one. So I've selected my teardrop shaped, or I should say my, feather, and I'm going to start applying it to my screen. Now, I actually did a freeform shape, and I just played with these particular shapes until I was satisfied with them. And in total, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different shapes. Seems like a lot, but it really went quickly. And once I get it saved as a stitch file, I can use it again. Let's start adding the shapes. So I'm going to start simply rotating and moving. How did I do that? Undo it. This is your best friend right here. Click on the blue circle and I get the rotate image. And I have it almost horizontal. If I really wanted to be pristine, I would go up here and I could select my arrows and rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise, but that's not going to work for this particular design. I could also type in the degree of rotation, but for me right now, this is really the easiest tool to use. And I'm just going to start placing my feathers. On my sample, you'll see that I did use the shapes from the holiday dies, and I'm not going to for this, just because I want to see how I actually put my feathers in. So I'm going to select this again and take a look at my objects menu. That's the column on the right hand side of the page, and I want to show you that right now I have one object. In the Essentials library, an object is a design. It can be stitched out at entirety. It doesn't have any parts to show you here. If I did have different parts to this design, if I clicked on it, I would get a drop down and I'd see 1, 2, 3, 4. We know this is applique. We do know this is applique for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's supposed to be, but number two, you come down to the lower half of that column and you can see that the very first color is an applique image. It says number one, applique position. That is the straight stitch that's going to show you where to place your die cut shape. Number two is your thread. I leave mine at Janome just because my brain is hardwired to think that way, and I don't always use the same thread, so it's just easier to go with an idea of color. So I'm going to start with my red, and now I'm going to click on this. In actual fact, I think let's go ahead and fill it. If I have my colors shown here and I select shape, it's going to show me several of the specifics about this particular shape. Number one, the border is an E-stitch. I could change that. I can go to a blanket stitch, a satin stitch, a zigzag stitch, or I could just simply leave it as a straight stitch. I prefer my E-stitch. I don't know why, I think it looks really good. The blanket stitch is nice though too. I can also change my stitch length and my stitch width. If I want a little bit heavier stitch, I can go to a 3. Actually, that makes it, I always get this confused. Nice thing about it, when I slide it down and I let go, it's going to show me. That's a much shorter stitch. That means my stitches are going to be a little bit closer together. I can also make it wider. So if I go to a 2.5, that's a little bit more stitching, and I like my thread to show. I'm kind of funny about that. What I want to show you next is I'm going to select shape. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to select fabric preview here. And what that does is that will fill with a simulated fabric the inside of my shape. This is going to help me in the end because I'm going to eventually change half of the shapes in my design to a different color. And it also helps me see its placement. So now I've got it set up the way I want it, and I'm just simply going to copy and paste this shape. By copying and pasting it, it's going to allow me to either keep the same color or to change it now that I have all of that specified on my design. So I'm going to Command-C on a Mac or Control-C on a PC, or I could go to File, Copy, or I could select this toggle right here. See where my arrow is circling? I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it. And if you look at your Objects menu, you're going to see that we now have two shapes. On my screen, it looks like we have one because the copied and pasted shape superimposes on the first shape. How are we going to fix that? We're going to left mouse click on it, drag the second shape up and away. And now you can see we have two teardrop shapes. This one, because it's highlighted, I am going to change some of the specifics of it. I'm going to select Applique and I'm going to select white. Let's go with pink. I think it'll be easier to see. Say OK, and I'm going to change my cardinal red to the pink as well. Eventually, when I stitch it out, this will be white. Now I'm going to start rotating this into position. So I think I want my ends pretty much there, and I'm going to rotate this down by clicking the blue rotation key, and I'm going to bring it into my shape. Now I have to point out object number 1 is going to stitch first. Object number 2 will stitch second. So anything that I put on top is going to be the top. There will be some coverage. So on my shape, I want this point to end against. Let's zoom in on that. So I go to the magnifying glass and zoom in. I want this point down at the bottom to end up against the edge of my darker red shape. And I can actually play a little bit and get it to do that. I think that's going to be perfect. Let's zoom back out. So I'm going to go to what looks like my compass, select it, and go to the heads up. And I'm going to keep adding my shapes. Two ways I can do this. The next one should be a red one, so I can click on it, copy and paste it, or I can change the color. Let's go ahead and let's copy and paste this one, the red one. Copy and paste. Again, it comes up. Superimposed. And we're going to, just like that. And we're going to curve around this image. So as I go, I can left mouse click, drop and drag and drop, and I can just create like that. This time we're going to, again, copy the pink and paste it, bring it up, curve around, a little bit of superimposing, and again the red, bring it up. Now I'm going to start my hook for my candy cane hook. Come around this way. Pink, copy paste, and I just keep repeating the same actions until I get the shape that I want. I'm going to finish my candy cane. I'll be back with you in just a second. Okay, I've got all of my shapes and I've kind of played with them. I've rotated some a little bit differently. And I'm going to need to move them to the center of my hoop. In order to do that, I'm going to select all of my shapes. And you can see I've got 11 of the feathers on my inside my hoop now. So I'm going to Command A or on my Mac or Control A on my PC, which I don't have, or I can actually left mouse click and drag a box around them. Let's go back and show you my full screen. Again, I can left mouse click and drag a bounding box around all the shapes, and that will select them all. Now I'm going to come to my toolbar and I'm going to select the Center Designs in the Hoop button, and it will move my entire design to the center of my hoop. Let's jump to the heads up display and see the whole thing. To me that looks a little bit off center, so I'm going to simply bring it down. Sometimes I found I have to click it twice, but as long as all of them are selected, it won't move an individual part. And that's a caution. Make sure all are selected or else you may find that you have to put pieces back together. I really, as I look at my object menu, I'm seeing that I have 11 feathers, which it jumps between color changes. So red goes red, pink, red, pink, red, pink. And if I want to see how it's going to stitch out, I'm going to select the needle up from the stitch simulator from the toolbar, and I can see it's really works kind of like anything with play, stop, reverse, and I've got a speed level. My speed is at the highest, but if I look at this, there are a lot of real color changes in here. Just to see it, and it's kind of hard to see since I've got the simulated color the same as the thread, but it starts drawing the first one second, red, pink, and I'm just going to stop it. What I'll be doing is I'll be bouncing back and forth between my pink and my red color. That's a lot of thread changes. It's a lot of changes that I don't necessarily want to make because it's all time. So let's toggle out of here, turn off the stitch simulator. Sorry about that. And I'm going to rearrange my design. This time, I am going to show you how you can drag objects to be in a different order. Let's say, let me see, the pink or the white as it will be, it probably should stitch first. So I am going to move the large feather, which is pink, I'm going to move it into the number 1 position. So I click on it, right mouse click, and I move it first. Now I've got 2 reds together, and now I'm going to take and I'm going to move number 4 to the number 2 position. Number 4 to the number 2. I can right click on it and I can move it earlier, which will move it up step by step, or I can click on it and drag it and drop it underneath. Sometimes it goes where I want it to do and sometimes it doesn't. That time it did. Now I've got 2 of what's going to be white stitching together. Number 6 is a pink. I'm going to left mouse click, drag, and drop. And now I'll right click and just make it easy on myself. Maybe not. Right mouse click on it, move earlier. And what I hope you can see what's happening is that my reds are going to stitch together and then my pinks are going to stitch together. Again, drag and drop. And the goal is to get all of the pink feathers in one position, or one sequence, not position. If they were in a position, they'd be on top of each other. I think that might be it. Just to ensure, red, 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 or stitch position, and all of my pinks and all of my reds are together. Now, because I'll be doing my background stitching in exactly the same color as or my position stitch in the same color as my E-stitch, this is going to work out great for me. Last thing I really want to share with you, let's click off, is what happens when we stitch it out. Will we get a lot of overstitching and a lot of understitching? Let's see. If I select this toggle, which is the Remove Hidden Stitches toggle, and let's just select this, and I move it out of the way. If you look at the pink, which is to its right, you can see an area that looks like there's something missing. Well, it is. It's because the stitches are not going to stitch out in that area. And if you look at the other pink feathers, and I can't point to it, I guess I could drag it over right in there, you see that those stitches are now missing. Well, what that means is you're not going to get a buildup of stitches underneath your applique. So I'm going to drop it and I'm going to let it be. That is really important, and that's what creates nice, even applique. So, that said, I can send this to my machine. How am I going to do that? I'm going to go to the File, Save As, Stitch and or Save, because this is a new file, Stitch and Working, and it's going to come up with a new window. I'm going to save to where I usually save my stitches, my embroidery files. I'm going to name it as Candy Cane up in the Save As. I have specified Jeff files. I can also specify a number of other files if I so choose. And I'm going to specify Save. Now, what is the difference between stitch and working? Stitch is what goes to your machine. Working is the file extension, the dot extension is BE. What that means, with a BE file, you maintain a totally editable file for the Essential software. It's a beautiful idea. If I want to come in and rearrange this, I say I stitch it out and I don't like it, I can come into my BE file and I haven't lost all of my work. My stitch file will go to my machine. If you come in and you want to, on this particular file at this point, it won't have taken the stitches out, but on my stitch file, it will. So if I go to my machine software, I won't see any stitches hidden behind the overlapping pieces of my applique. That sounds a bit confusing, but it's really important to know that it will work well for your machine. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you learned to love your Accuquilt Essentials just like I have. Until next time, bye.